All right, testing. There we go. So testing, making sure my mic is going well. Thank you all for attending this week. We're going to get started right into our continued discussion from last week. We were all talking about the social card and the connection with the social card with the corporation system. We're going to learn how you can use your social security card correctly in the what we call the corporation system. So we'll be talking more in detail about that as what we did last week. We wanted to make sure everyone had the details of understanding that from some of the readings we had. We also went into the deep underlying layers of the system that goes right into where where the Moorish knowledge that led to the system that we know of today. So we also want to go into that and understanding how a lot of people may get into the Moors, but we've been able to venture into that as well to understand why the Moors were instrumental in keeping the system, as we understand, intact with the financial system. So I'll be going into those details of how to get out of this that has been set up, and how a lot of these things are going to deal with what you're dealing with today. And more likely today, it's going to be something that we're going to say that's for you, that's going to happen Monday through Friday. So Monday through Friday, everyone in this system has to go through the system because that's when the government opens. For some reason, the government is never open on Saturday and Sunday. So it gives us time to understand how to use their system, how to go into different methods, go into different strategies. So that's what we do on these calls every week. We are here to try to strategize, or not try. We're going to say we are here to strategize. So we're able to get out of the systematic ways that we have been taught, we'll say, about money. We're going to go into money first because money is a main topic of banking, because you can't have a bank without money. Everyone has a bank account, but do you have the money in the bank? That'll always be our question of how we can understand this layer of understanding that we were never taught in school. So I'm going to open up with a few diagrams as I usually do, and I'm going to also open up with a lot of different comments, questions, and shares that we get from the audience, or someone may have something to say about the Social Security card, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep it very easy because we know that our grandparents and people around us have had this social card for a very long time, but we have never been told what we're supposed to do with the card. Now, I had to get into this knowledge after I got out of college, so you can't learn this in college either. So for those who think that the educated ones were supposed to know this, or they went to law school, or they went to doctorate school, or they're even a medical doctor, they don't have this knowledge either, from what we've been able to discover over the last 7 to 10 years, as well as the PhD people were never taught any of this knowledge in college, right? So we're going to go as far as saying this hits everyone, that's from the least to the greatest, from the lowest to the highest, right? From the billionaire to the homeless guy. That's what we're trying to say. So let's just open up with any introductions. I'll introduce myself. My name is Wallace Lewis Temple Jr., sometimes known as Ra or Raak. That is what I've been able to be, I guess, identified by from these last 7+ years that I've been knowing and understanding this knowledge. What I've done is I've been able to master in myself how to use a trust. What I mean is a trust, I'm speaking of a definition that's given to us by the Internal Revenue Service, which is the government. So I'm using all of the knowledge that I had to use from understanding what the government had put into my head about a trust, right? So I didn't go outside to try to learn a trust from a different group. I didn't try to go and learn under the Moorish understanding of a trust. I didn't go under the American nationals. I didn't go under the secured party creditors. I didn't go into any of these other understandings of a trust, right? Because a trust is a very basic thing that you have to start off with yourself. And we learned this because we can't go past the biblical principles either, because everything I'm saying is in the Bible. We're going to also say that everything that I'm saying has to be found in the Bible, because we learned the Bible is also a money and banking book, as well as a book that is used for estates and trusts. So we're going to go into layers to kind of help everybody fully gain the knowledge of what we're going to do and how we're going to deal with this Social Security card. So let's go and open up to my first diagram we have on the screen for today. And I'm going to show you all. Sorry about that. here at the main studio, so it's going to have a little kickback at each time I try to show something on the screen. So bear with me as I pull that up for us. So as you can see right here, I did this. Um, as you can see, this was probably revised in 2005, but I'm going back as far as I can to when I first went into the knowledge, so you all can see it from my perspective. So when I first got into this and I understood what to do to study, I started to understand what is a trust. So when I say this, I'm not saying it off the top of my head. I don't want you all to think that this is going to come off the top of your head. It's impossible. You're going to have to print it out. You're going to have to look at the definitions. You may have to quote it to know where it's found. So I put here is you're going to be finding this according to the law 21.7.13.5.8.1. Right. So you're going to make sure when you quote this to the IRS agents or any agent, we don't care which agent they are. And we're going to be very specific because I also believe, I don't know yet, but I do believe that this may be your way to overcome the matrix as well. We're going to go as far as saying even overcoming the matrix that they say that you can't get out, right? You're not able to get out of the matrix or something, right? We're going to go as far as saying even with this knowledge, you may or you might be able to get out of the matrix because this matrix that they created is a program that they have placed over all of us based upon their codes, right? So these codes that I'm saying to you, you may have to say these codes to these IRS agents, to the government agents, any of these agents, right? We're going to say they're all called agents. Let's just keep it easy for our mind, similar to the matrix. They'll say, hey, make sure you never get into a situation with an agent. All right, so this will be your way of giving full understanding and definition of a trust. So we're not creating our own understanding or going into our own ways of what a trust is, okay? All right, so if anybody have any comments or questions as we go, we want to make sure everyone can fully, go along and grasp how we're supposed to communicate, which we call this government. Go ahead. We got Brother David. Feel free. Got your mic open.
Yes, thank you. Yes, good evening to everyone. I'm Brother David. I just wanted to say that this information has been available to us, but it has been like a best kept secret in broad daylight. And I'm just so appreciative to this brother bringing this information because at a critical time like this might be just what we need that can help us through this rough period that we're going through right now. Not only ourselves, but we can share this information with our families and we can all benefit. So I just wanted to thank Brother Wallace for bringing this information forward, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. So, yes, this is something that is new, but at the same time is very old, right? We're going to go as far as saying that this is going back to ancient times with the trust. So trust isn't something that has been invented by anyone. So no one can invent trust. Just for those who thought of whenever they were sold the information of trust, they didn't invent it. It's no way they could have figured it out, right? So let's go through some of the definitions. I'm going to read through this because I got a lot to go through with you all today. And we're going to go through some diagrams. So it says a trust is a legal entity. Okay, so that's the first thing you learn is that it's a legal entity. Went over last week, you can't use the letter form of a trust. Why is this going so low? Okay. You can't use the letter form for a trust. You want to use the legal paper. So when you deal with legal entities, make sure forever, here on out, you use legal paper. That means that's the 8.5 by 14 paper when you print out your trust. Okay, so very important that we're using word for word and example for example when we're dealing with this entity. So it says it is created under state law. So that means the state law will protect you once you have a trust and is taxed under federal law in which one party holds assets for the benefit of another. So this means taxes may be on the trust, but we'll get into when you pay taxes on the trust, how this may get you out. So you may get out of the taxes as well. Can be created to do one act or series of acts. Okay, so that is what a trust does. I gave you 3 points. This is the full knowledge that you need to know according to the government. So if you all thought that trust was very hard to understand, make sure you get out of that knowledge of that, and that we're going to go through everything to make sure trust is very easy to understand. Here's a table below describes the associated terms and types of trust. Okay, we got somebody want to make a comment. Feel free. All right, like brother Jeremy. Okay, he probably just had the mic right there.
Oh, sorry about that. Hit it by accident.
All right, no worries. All right, so this says the table below describes associated terms and types of trust. So this is your first term that deals with a trust. All right. So remember, I was telling you all what the IRS tells you that you are and you have to be. So the first term we have for today is fiduciary. So at this point forward, you must become a fiduciary in order to run a trust. So a fiduciary, according to the definition, is a trustee of a trust. That's the first thing that we understood. Or an executor, an executrix, administrator, administratrix, a personal representative, or person in possession of a property of a decedent. A person designated as the recipient of funds is a beneficiary. So that's our next term right here, beneficiary. So that's why I say we're going to turn into a beneficiary when you have a trust. A person designated as the recipient of funds or other property under a trust or an estate. So that's a good part right here. We're going to learn that you're going to be receiving funds under a trust or an estate as a beneficiary. Corpus, the principal sum of a capital of a trust or estate as distinguished from interest or income. That's a corpus. So you're learning about a corpus from what, if you ever see that word around, now you know what it means. The principal sum of the capital of a trust or an estate. So that's the full sum of the whole entire estate if you all have a social card. As we understand that the social security card is also considered an estate. Next is the maker slash grantor. The persons or a person or organization that originated the trust or has control over the trust. That's it. So remember, you talk about how you have that instrument, you got to have that trust instrument. This gives you that origination, you created it, and so on, right? The other part that gives you control is you're holding the document in your hand or you have an EIN for the name of the trust. So once you get an EIN, this gives you control over the trust. So we go into this to make it easier to show that the maker and the creator or the grantor is the same position. Next is simple trust. This is what we do. We focus on simple trust. We don't want you all to get into the complex trust yet because we know if you don't understand the simple things, then we know you definitely don't understand the complex trust things that they're going to sell you online. Doesn't matter what type of trust they tell you about. If it's complicated and it's something that you need them for, then we know that it's very difficult for you to do this trust. So we don't want you to get into the difficult trust that they tell you to do. It should be one step. It should not be 5 to 10 steps to do the trust. So let's read it and see what exactly a simple trust is. A trust. It says for which the trust instrument requires that all income be distributed currently, with no authority to make charitable contributions or distribute amounts allocated to the corpus of the trust. And that is a simple trust only for a year in which it distributes income and makes no other distributions to beneficiaries. There you go. So that is a simple trust. So that means there's no beneficiaries getting the money. The money pays the bills or the money pays for the expenses of the beneficiaries. So that is a simple trust. That's the best way I can explain that. Now you all have to practice that because you can have the explanation all day. But if you're not practicing it, you don't understand how it works. It says when a trust does not meet these requirements for a year, it is a what? A complex trust. You see that? So if you don't operate simply, the government already told y'all that you're becoming a complex trust because you're operating complexly. You're becoming more complicated to or complex to create a trust with. So they tell us to keep it simple, making sure that you don't have none of the money going to your own self, and this will make it a easy, simple trust. There we go. So here's the complex trust. This is the one they're giving everybody to do. Almost everyone we know that's out there that's dealing with trust, so far, they are not going into the simple trust. Even if it goes into the 508, we're going to start talking about all these different things. They tell you about the 508, C13, or C1A. I don't know if it's C13, whatever it is. But the key point is even there's some complexities to this. We don't want to go into the complexities. We want to go into the simple. So it says a trust which for the taxable year does not qualify as a simple trust. That's it. It's all they're going to tell you. So just for those who have been trying to figure out trust for all these years, this is why it's been so hard, because they have given you the complex trust first. They've never told you about the simple trust. Next we have is the grantor trust. This is the one that you all are already doing right now. Even if you realize it or not, you don't know that you're doing it, but you're still doing it in a way, even if you didn't realize it. So a trust that is set up by a living person or organization, or created by a will, or is set up so that the income from the trust is taxable income of the grantor. There we go. So that goes into your 1040. All right. So that shows you why the 1040 is the grantor. Then you get into the non-taxable grantor trusts do not report income, deductions, and credits on Form 1041. So it's a very important part we see right here, that it shows that the non-taxable grantor trust is this other one that stays on the 1040 side. It shows you why the 1040 is the grantor. So Form 1041, U.S. income tax return for trusts and estates. So you don't put the credits on Form 1041 if you're in the grantor, or if you have the Social Security card. That is all connected to where all your assets and all of your funding is going. Let's go ahead and mute that out. There's some background noise. All right, so this next is your inter vivos trust, a trust established by a grantor during his or her lifetime. So that's another way of you looking at a trust that you established or that you created. That is a inter vivos trust. It goes into the Latin. Next definition we have, and we're almost done. Why does this keep popping up? We can't see anything. We'll move it out the way. All right, it says the revocable trust. This is where we are. This is what we teach and instruct everyone every week to understand and use. We want you to use the revocable trust. The grantor has control of the trust, e.g., has power to repeal or annul, and pays the taxes of the trust on his or her Form 1040. Note, the grantor files Form 1041 for informational purposes only. All right, so it says it right there. The revocable trust is for informational purposes only, and it's always going to be for the private side. That's going to be the private side of your unincorporated taxes. Next is irrevocable trust. The grantor has no control of the trust, and the trust pays the taxes. That's right. So that means that the grantor loses control. He's given everything over to the trust, and now he can't change anything. It's a difference. The revocable trust, you can change things. The irrevocable, you can't change anything once it starts. And testamentary trust is created by a will which begins its existence upon the death of the person making the will, when property is transferred from the decedent's estate. They call it testamentary trust. Let me scroll out so y'all can see that, if it lets me scroll up. This thing is in the way. I don't know what the problem is with this. Can't move this out of the way. So I can't read that last part until I can figure out how to move this out of the way. But a testamentary trust is simply like a trust that goes through the court or the probate, but you had a will, and then the judge or the different parties will look over the will, and then they would say, hey, this is a trust that is done this way by this person's will. So that's one that is normally done where they say it's a will in place for someone before they pass on. So that's it. That's all I have for you all for our first topic for today is trust. And this is where you're going to get your information from here on out. We don't want you to try to go get all your information, all your knowledge from other locations, other law offices, lawyers. Make sure you use irs.gov, right? So they are the one that is over even the lawyers. So even the lawyers, they have to abide by this as well. So if we go into that to say that the lawyer knows more than you, technically the lawyer doesn't know as more than you. They don't even know as much as you either, unless they're studying the same information. So we're just putting that out there just for those who are thinking that you must go to the lawyer to understand a trust. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say this anywhere in the IRS. Be sure to get legal advice. Be sure to get legal counsel before you try to establish a trust. Does it say that anywhere? Yeah, short answer is no. So we want to make sure everyone totally understands this so that you can overcome a lot of these factors that we've been facing and we have not been able to get out of because we're still dealing with this on a which we say the corporation level. So I wanted to get through that. So let's go to our next. I want to show you this next one. So any comments or questions on trust after today, if you all need access to that, you should be able to review that video that we have is live right now. You'll be able to see that. You can see this, or you can just go to the definitions that I gave you and told you to type it in on irs.gov. As you see, that is a location that it tells you exactly where it's found at and where you can do all the information research. All right, so let's go next to the next diagram. I'm going to show you how you get access to the EIN. And what happens is that as long as you do this correctly, most of the time you're going to get an EIN, right? So that is very important that you firstly see yourself getting an EIN eventually for the trust. Because if you don't have an EIN, then it's as if you can't control that name that you just created. All right, so here we go. Now, reading right here from 21.7.13.5.8.2. And as you can see, this right here is going to tell you individuals authorized to receive EINs and specifically trusts. So we want to show you that you have the authority, you have the authorization through your social, because once you come out of this social security card, you're coming out of the corporation because you have to get into a trust. This means everything that you do, everything that you have has to be given over to a trust, right? So that's why we tell people to create a brand new name, because the reason why is because if you stay the same, trying to hold on to the same person you were with the same name is difficult because you're still seeing yourself still connected to the same name, the same people, the same connections and the problems, the bills. This is why we say come out of that name. So we're going into details to kind of give more on a personal level why you create the EIN this way. So you don't want to create an EIN staying the same that you were before, because I told you all just a moment ago, or I said coincidentally, that you're thinking the lawyer knows more than you. It never said that the lawyer or the attorneys have to do your trust. It doesn't say that. So you have to be as right as the lawyer or even better. You got to be as right as the lawyers or even better. So it shows you that you're authorized to receive an EIN for trust. Established EINs can be disclosed to who? A grantor. So it never said a lawyer, never said a power of attorney. It never said anything. It said you. It said you're the grantor. You're the one in charge. You're the one with the social card. So you already got power of attorney. You already had it. You always had access the entire time. It's right here. It says a grantor. Only when the trust is a grantor trust. Types of trust for more information on a grantor trust. That's right. So that means you got to have that instrument that I tell you all to be in a revocable living trust, because that creates you into the grantor trust. You also can become a trustee. As you can see, if you have that trust instrument, you instantly have made yourself the trustee of yourself, which is meaning you're the trustee of the social security card. So you can't just stay the grantor the whole time either. You got to become a trustee of the trust that you created. So you can't use the trust that they created and try to get all the money. You can't. It's not going to work because they control that money. Like I said, that's an irrevocable trust that the United States of America, they have created an irrevocable trust. So they can't change it. I know people keep trying to change United States. You can't change United States of America. It's impossible. It's better for you to come out of United States of America and go into your own revocable living trust. It's way easier. And you got to become the trustee of your own trust. You can't be the trustee for everybody else's trust, trying to manage their trust all day. You got to be managing your own trust. And I'm saying this because I know a lot of us are still struggling with this revocable trust. We're still out here trusting all these other people first, but we're putting ourselves last. Next is a beneficiary. A beneficiary, that means you need to benefit from the trust. Don't just have it and you're not getting the benefits. A beneficiary having a material interest, that's right. So that means I need the materials. I need the car. I need to have I got to have some clothes. I got to have food. Ain't nothing wrong with a trust. They making it seem like it's something wrong. It is nothing wrong with no trust. A beneficiary having a material interest must be submitted in writing with proof of material interest, such as a copy of the will. I hear. See, that's why I tell you that that revocable trust instrument is like a will. Everything's written already. You don't have to have a will. If you got a revocable living trust, you don't need a will. Or a authorized representative. That's your last person. Most of y'all go straight to the authorized representative, but I'm telling you that you're the authorized representative. So why are you trying to go to the lawyers or to the CPAs or to these other people to do this trust? You don't need those people to do the trust. You are the main one. All right. So the EINs must not be disclosed to a third party without a valid Form 2848 or Form 8821 or taxpayer signed Form SS4. So this telling you the IRS told y'all not to give your stuff over to the third party. But guess what? We're being sold the advertisement that you must give over all your stuff to them. They need it. They need power of attorney. And I keep showing you all the evidence why at the end of the day, it is us. We're giving over power of attorney to all these companies. You're giving power of attorney over to the corporation, to the United States of America Corporation, right? And all these agents, you're giving them the agency power. Because once you give them that Form 2848, you know what it says at the top, right? It says it. It says it's declaration of power of attorney. When you go into the details of Form 2848, for all those who have studied this in the times that we've been doing the trust, you all for the first time hearing this, you may not know about Form 2848, but it's a very powerful form that accesses all of your Social Security benefits. All right, so this is how they access your benefits through your Social Security card account. All right, so let's keep going. Right here, so 21.7.13.5.8.3 is determining the need for an EIN, right? That's going to be the EIN that you need in order to operate that trust. So you got to get the EIN because it is a trust and you got to prove that you are operating a trust. You can't be operating your social. All right. So we're going to be very detailed to tell you you're not supposed to be operating your social. A new trust entity is created. That means they're going to assign you an EIN. A trust becomes an irrevocable following death. Boom. Look at that. They tell you right there, they're creating an EIN. Wow. Everybody we know, they got the EIN because we did not take the EIN back from them. Look at that. Let me scroll in for this because I want you all to see where this is coming from. So that means every family member that has died or death or deceased, instantly the system is creating a what? A trust. Look at that. It didn't say, it says it right here. It says trust. So that means they're creating a trust EIN for whoever our parent, our grandparent, or our family member, who they are, right? Regardless of the situation, even if they're incapacitated, they can be at the hospital. They are probably creating a trust. So I'm giving you all this is truly seeing this from where the IRS is telling you this, and yes, the lawyers and the CPAs and all these, they're going to follow suit and do the law according to what it says here. Next, an estate changes to a testamentary trust. That's right. So that means somebody put a will in place and they're going to grab the estate and they're going to start capturing that estate, all the property, all the cars, the clothes, the furniture, the estate, right? Because they created a will or where all that was going to be given to. Who are they going to give everything over to in the family? All right. So that's where you see a testamentary trust coming into place because someone is creating a will, whether through saying it out of their mouth or they wrote it on a piece of paper. Right. So that is where the IRS is telling you that they're going to still assign an EIN. They're still going to assign an EIN. They don't never leave it in the social. So I'm proving to you all beyond reasonable doubt that even if I was brought into a federal tax court, I am going to win. Why am I going to win? Because I'm showing you that it says word for word, assign an EIN. Number 4, a trust changes to an estate. That's right. That means that it changes to an estate and it uses the estate, EIN, whatever it is going to have an EIN. This is the best one we like right here. A living or inter vivos trust. Look at that. A living trust. That's why we tell you a living revocable trust. Right? This is changing to a testamentary trust because they're telling you that it's also including a will within that living revocable trust. All of your will, all of your wishes, all of your desires will be fulfilled in the living revocable trust. Because then they're going to turn it over to the EIN, and that's where all the money's going to be. And the last one is the living trust. I can't read it. It says living trust is terminated by distributing its property to a residual trust. There we go. So that means that you all can terminate your trust at any time that you choose to go back to the social, right? So they're still going to create an EIN for you. But if you distribute all those funds to a social, which is a residual trust, that is going to change over the trust, even if it's an EIN that's distributing the funds over to a personal account. So I'm showing you the IRS is giving you the EIN the entire time. They never told you to stay with the social security number ever at any time. So any comments or questions so far? I was able to go through 2 diagrams that gives you all the confidence you need if you're facing an agent, right? So if it's an agent of the United States government, it could be an agent of the city. We don't care. We're going to go as far down from the federal to the state to the local. Right? We're going to get all the way down to that to show you why the trust will work. The trust works in every situation. All right. So we went through that to show and prove to you where all the information is coming from and how the IRS is where you're supposed to study this knowledge. You're not supposed to go study all these other groups and all these other people out here of how to deal with their trust. Because we're going to show you how you're going to study through the Internal Revenue Service and get mostly every answer you need for free. So you don't even have to pay for this. You're supposed to just do this for free. All right, so let's go into the next thing, and I'll go into a few comments, questions, but shares for a moment. So if anybody have any thoughts to this so far, feel free. The mic is open for this moment. All right, so there's no comments right now, so let's go right into where we are now at this term. Right now, at this very moment in this time, most of us are going to be dealing with a domestic trust. So I'll go into the definitions of the difference between a foreign trust and a domestic trust. So we'll talk about why the foreign trust is most of the time the government is operating most of the time as a foreign trust because they're able to have foreign relations with other entities that are outside of your state or outside of your local area. So they're considered like a foreign corporation sometimes. So I'm going to go through these definitions really fast for you, but I want you to all focus on a domestic trust. That's going to be the one that we want you all to focus on for today. The term domestic, when applied to a business entity, means created or organized in the United States or under the law of the United States of America of any state, unless in case of partnership, the secretary provides otherwise by regulations. A business entity created or organized both in the United States and in a foreign jurisdiction is a domestic entity. The term the term foreign, when applied to a corporation or partnership, means corporation or partnership which is not domestic. Domestic trust. The term domestic trust means a trust in which a court within the United States is able to exercise primary supervision over the administration of the trust, and one or more U.S. persons having the authority to control all substantial decisions of the trust. Look at that. So they're showing you through definition why they have full all power and authority over that social card, that social bank account. They have full authority and power over that personal social security card account. So we got to get out of that personal bank account. And I'm telling you all that they have all the power to shut down the money, because this is showing you how much power they say they have primary supervision over the administration of the trust. This is why you see even in the government now, this new administration, they're proving that they can shut down the job, even if it's a federal. So we're going as far as even if you're a federal employee, you really are still under that domestic trust. So they can terminate or they can exercise supervision over your account. All right. So that's why we're seeing the president right now. He's able to make substantial decisions. Okay. And he can pull up your social security card. So it depends on the name or the person that he's looking at. As you can see right here, according to the IRS definition of this IRC code, which is the law, it says or more U.S. persons having the authority to control all substantial decisions. Wow, this is so detailed. I'm telling you. So this is why they have so much power, you all. When they say, why are they doing this? How are they able to do this? This is where you're getting the knowledge and information from, and showing you right here about why you're coming out of the social account. All right, so this is the part right here. As we go further, let's go and read into where you see the foreign trust. All right, so foreign trust, it says the term foreign trust means any trust, right, other than a domestic trust. That's right. That's so easy, right? They're not making it hard for y'all. I'm telling you, these people out here, they're going to make it hard. They're going to make it so difficult to understand. So you see it right there. It says any trust other than a domestic trust. As long as you got that EIN and you got something other than what we got, is what they saying, right? So that is where I'm trying to distinguish you all with the domestic trust versus your trust that you have created. Because this is a foreign trust. Like we didn't say it has to be a 9-8 number, which we're going to get into the details of the 9-8 numbers later, right? Because that is a different type of trust that is foreign, but we're saying that also that your revocable trust does also become a foreign trust. So it is in a way a foreign trust based upon the definitions, right? Now it does operate domestically within the United States, but it still is considered unincorporated or private. Next is a domestic estate, any estate with other than a foreign estate. That's right. So that goes right into the domestic estate. That means the estate is under the domestic, right? So it's under the same definitions of domestic trust. So it also falls under domestic estate. Foreign estate. The foreign estate means an estate income of which from sources outside the United States, which is not effectively connected with the conduct of a trade or business within the United States, is not includable in gross income under subtitle A of Title 26 of the U.S. code. Look at that. It tells you straight up that if you become the foreign estate and you go to certain countries that don't focus on tax or any of that stuff, you'll be outside of the jurisdiction of the United States also right here if you had a foreign estate. But some of us are not thinking this. They're thinking that, this is, I'm just somewhere that I live, somewhere I have a passport. So a passport does not make you a foreign estate. So you need other things along with the passport. Using the table below when processing requests for international EIN. Look at that. So that is where you get into the international EIN. So I'm going to show you how this looks right here. It says received by mail, fax, or phone to determine whether an entity is foreign and therefore will be assigned EIN prefix 98. All right, so that's going to be the prefix 98 by Cincinnati or Ogden campus. So it says a corporation or limited liability company indicates on line 9B that it was incorporated in a foreign country. So that's assigned prefix 9A. So that means that you're doing business in a location that's not in United States. That's why you get the 98 number. So we're going to go into this to show you why you're not supposed to use the 98 number within United States. So there's no point of using it here. Use the 98 number when you're international, when you're somewhere else. So we're going to go into show you where this is 98 is coming from. If you ever went into the 98, we also know of the 98 number as well, where you get the W8 bin. Look right here. They go into the W8 certificate of foreign government, certificate of this, and so on. So yes, we are full knowledge of knowing about the 98 number, right? So the 98 number is available if you are thinking that you're eventually not going to be doing business within continental United States. All right. So let's say, for instance, you're in Dubai, right? Or you're in somewhere in Ghana. You're in, somewhere in the Middle East, whatever it is, right? Your 98 number. All right. So I wanted to get into this to kind of go into where some of us are getting into the mysterious numbers. And maybe this is supposed to lead you to a whole bunch of cash or money. And you're able to just get all this cash and money into the 9A. So we're learning that it's not that simple. We're not going to say that's a simple trust. We're going to tell you that according to our knowledge and definitions we've been learning, that will bring you into the complex trust. All right. So we're not here to give you the complex trust. We want to keep you all into the simple trust. So this right here, as I said right here, IRC 7701 definitions. I explained to you that if you stay and remain in the Social Security card, whatever it is, even if it's the Social Security card, the government, they have primary supervision over the administration of all the funds in that trust. They have authority and control on all substantial decisions of the trust. So they can deny you, they can hold your funds, they can freeze it, they can ask you for more information and all these things. This is why you know that if it's in the social trust, this is where it becomes a domestic trust. All right, so that is important for us to see where this is coming from. Very small definition. It's not a big definition that's there to kind of keep it confusing for you. They wanted to keep it as simple as they can. As you can see, that's what they call it right here. All right, so let's go into more comments or questions or shares. Any comments or questions or shares so far based upon that type of trust that I just explained? So you got your differences of the foreign trust versus the domestic trust. So any comments, questions, or shares on the foreign trust and the domestic trust? All right, so let's go into another. Then I'll be going back into our reading that we went in from last week and the meat of our discussion. All right, so I want you all to see some layers of how you're going to a foreign. So this would make it foreign, similar to how my wife, I was able to help her do this at a certain point. And I did get this done through the United States. So I'm showing you how to look when you're thinking of becoming foreign, right? And what I mean by foreign, I mean that you're actually going to prove that it's foreign. You're not going to say that it's foreign. You're going to prove that it's foreign. So like, for instance, I was able to use a foreign country before and do the process of what they call authentication. I'm going to show you an example of why you're doing the foreign trust understanding so that you can understand why you become foreign, even with the revocable living trust as well. So let me answer a few questions before I go into that. I'll pull that diagram up in just a moment. All right, I have a few tech difficulties with the diagram, so you all just bear with me. I'm going to take a short commercial break, and I'm going to get that diagram in just a moment. All right, thank you all for bearing with me in that moment. So let's go right into our diagram. Before I go into that, any comments or questions so far based upon what I was able to present at this moment? I just want to make sure I'm capturing everyone and to what maybe I'm missing. Maybe we talked about something, but let me answer that question. We did have one. As I'm getting back, I'm going to see this question. Then I'll check out our YouTube audience too, make sure we have any questions on YouTube. Okay, they asked me. What's this time? Okay, that was 6:05. It says, so the question was, when would you use the trust versus the estate? All right, so that was a question asked right here in the audience. And that's a great question. So um, the reason why one will use the estate is due to many reasons why most people have things in their name. This is why I say it's not advisable for you all to use the revocable living trust with the same name. And the reason I say this is because it kind of convolutes your mind and staying the same. In a way, you don't want to get out of that name and you're still kind of stuck to the same people and the same conditions and the ways that you were in. And you're kind of bringing it over to the trust. That's what I think. Because I was there at one point. So I had to stop thinking of myself as the trust, as the revocable living trust. So I started thinking I had to create a new name for myself. Right. So from there, when I created a name for myself, a new name for myself, this made it a lot easier to maneuver with the trust to get out of their government system. Right. Getting out of their system. That's the first reason why the new name is important, because they can't capture you in the same name anymore because you've created a new name. Right. Next is the estate is probably the best way to also get out of your name. This is why I say the best time to use the estate is when you're trying to use your name. That's the best answer I can say for this, because if you're going to keep using your name, that's fine. Just make sure it's the estate. Use the estate name. Use the estate EIN. That's what I'm going to start telling people, because if we have to make this plain every time and you just stay the same, still you're going to use your name anyway as the revocable living trust, I'm explaining to you why you shouldn't do that, and you should just use the estate EIN, because it'll be a lot easier for you to get out of that name as well. Now, if you're trying your best trying to over explain that that your name is a revocable living trust, that's not the intention. That's not the intention. The intention is to make sure your name is an estate. Just to kind of make it clear, because we got to make sure that everyone fully knows why to have the inter vivos living trust. So you're coming out of the system, you're coming out of the name that you were in. You want to go into a new name, you want to have a new life, a new start, a new everything. Right? So this could take you years until you come out of that cycle that we have been taught. And like I say, that is important. That's a great question, because the estate is the easiest way to come out of your name as well, because you can put your name there. It'll be the estate of your name, or it'll say your name, comma, estate. And boom, you're out of the system as well, because you're now using the estate. So I get it. I know it's hard to accept a lot of these things, but this is where it all is coming from. So great question. I'm glad we was able to get through that. And let's go into another diagram that I wanted to show you. Oh, that's not like. Apologies for that. It's playing the music over my voice, so it should be good to go now. All right, so here we go. So this is it right here, you all. So this is the foreign trust, the foreign understanding of the trust. All right, so this is where I say you get to this point where if you want to make sure the name is being taken out, this is where you're coming out of the United States as well. If you're getting into the foreign, which they call the foreign trust. Now, I was there to help this for my wife. We were able to do this a number of years ago. And you're able to do this in the form where you send it over to the Department of State. And this is another way that one is coming into the foreign estate, or you're going into a foreign trust. All right. So I see that a lot of us may have been sold this information differently, because you're being told about getting access to a birth certificate. And like I said, it has nothing to do with this. I tried this before. It doesn't work like that. What you do by doing this, I would say, if one chooses to take this path with this authentication of the certificate of live birth, and also if you choose to do this path with going foreign, what it does, it gives you full faith and credit. According to the document, it tells you according to the full faith and credit of the United States. So this is why eventually at some point you do want to get into the full faith and credit, so that you can begin to feel and know that you're not domestic. All right, so that is a very important part that we see, that the Department of State is a key factor for you all to come out of as well. You got to come out of the Department of State, and this is including the Department of State of your state. Like period. It actually says it, Department of State. Right? So your state is a department, and the United States is another Department of State. So you got two layers. You got your state that you have to come out of. Remember, I tell you all about the birth certificate coming out of the name, coming out of your birth certificate name. Create a new name for your legacy. Like, don't use your same name on your birth certificate. So this is why this gets to the difficulty if we still use the same name as a revocable living trust. All right. So don't use your same name that's on your birth certificate as your revocable living trust. Update to a new name eventually. Right. So eventually you do need to update to a new name. All right. So that goes into the detail of what is happening when you're going foreign, because the foreign side, like I say, they'll tell you to choose a country. Like I say, I chose a non-Hague country. Some of the non-Hague countries, you can use Jamaica. They got a few other countries that are non-Hague. That's if you want to go foreign. So I tell you all, we are to look at ourselves as being around the world. All right. So if you want to come out of the United States, you also got to be able to come out of the country, right? You got to go to other countries, right? So this is important for us to see the mindset of what it looks like while you're doing this. Like I say, this is a birth certificate. This is the certificate of live birth, and you have to fill that out. And not only do you have to do this for yourself, like I say, I had to help my wife. You got to help your children too. If you have youth, you have children, they all have to come out of the system too. That's why I say the faster that we do this for ourselves, we can figure it out for ourselves, or we can do this for ourselves, the easier it's going to be to do for others. So that is an important diagram I wanted to give you all right here as why the United States of America is a corporation that you have to be able to live without, right? You have to be without United States of America. And I understand a lot of people try to get in here. It ain't nothing wrong with getting in. You got to also get out. We're not saying it's a bad thing to get out, but don't get kicked out, right? We'd rather you just be able to get out on your own accord, right? Get in on your own accord as well. So it's very important as I go through this diagram to give you all some layers to why the authentication was also utilized. So that gets you into the foreign estate as well as even the foreign trust. All right, so I took a picture of this diagram some years ago to kind of explain the banking system that you all have to coming out of if you are going to be doing this. And we already know the social security card is a banking system. So once you get their social card, you instantly are going to be entered into the banking system, whether you agree or not. All right. So every time that you get deposits, you see the bank, the corporation is basically using you as their assets and liabilities. All right. And they're using the public. It says public, individuals, and businesses. So as you can see, the asset is the bank account. If y'all never knew this today, I'm giving you all the secret of knowledge of understanding money. Your asset is the bank account. If you're using this system, you're using this government, you got to make sure that bank account is being placed into an asset column. The loan from the bank, according to what it says here, is a liability. That's right. So the loan from the bank is a liability to you. You see, because the Federal Reserve Bank, the banks are getting themselves out of debt. What they're doing, they're just throwing the debt upon the public and the individuals. The bank got to run their books too because they got their bank account and they got their loan from the bank too. And so they're going to throw it on us. We got the bank account and the loan from the bank. So this is the money. This is the understanding of money and how everything flows, because you go start off with the Federal Reserve banking system. That's where they get the notes from, as we talked about before, how you get the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, where money starts. We talked about that, how you go to the bep.gov. For those who have not gone to that site, you want to make sure you understand how money works. So U.S. government bonds are assets on the government. So the Federal Reserve even have assets. Federal Reserve uses U.S. government bonds. Federal Reserve gives loans to banks. Federal Reserve has a gold/forex. They use gold and forex. Interesting. Even the Federal Reserve knows how to keep assets. What are their liabilities? Bank deposits. So the Federal Reserve sees the bank deposits as a liability. Every time they put money in the bank, that's a liability to them. Federal Reserve notes are liabilities to the Federal Reserve. Wow. Who would have knew that the Federal Reserve Bank says that the Federal Reserve notes that they give out to people is a liability? Interesting. Next, so now the bank got the money that you all get the money from. So the Federal Reserve don't put the money in the bank for you. And now the bank's got the money. So now we know where all the money is coming through. It's coming through your social account to the banks. And the banks can be Bank of America. The banks can be Chase Bank. It could be Wells Fargo. It could be US Bank. It could be any of the banks. So their assets, according to this diagram that we have, and liabilities, if you all understand financial accounting, I'm going to give you all some education on financial accounting today, since we're all doing financial literacy. This is all financial literacy for education purposes only. So assets are reserves, U.S. government bonds, and loans to the public. That's their assets. They even got U.S. government bonds. Look at that. Even the banks are buying government bonds. Reserves, they're buying reserves. All right. And look at this. Look at the last one. Loans. Okay. So the bank, they write that as an asset every time you all get a loan in the Social Security card. So the Social Security card account is basically an asset to them. Next is a liability. Liabilities to them are deposits and borrowing. Look at that. So every time y'all borrow from the bank, this is a liability to the bank. Hey man, we know we may not approve it this time. We don't know. This is a liability to us. You know that, right? Deposits. Every time you put money in the bank, it's a liability. Wow, look at this. This is crazy. So the more money you put in the bank looks at you like you're a liability to them. Why you got all this money in the bank? Why are you giving me all this money? Wow. Do we understand what we're reading, you all? The banks see your money as a problem. We're going to say that. Especially if you got it sitting there and you want them to hold it. So as we go further, we see the assets. The bank tells you about, we see our assets as a person. This is you. You're a man, you're a woman, whatever, you're a man, and you got a household, or you're a woman, you're building a household, what you got. Okay, so your bank account is your asset. Loans from the bank is a liability for you. This is a private person. So as a private individual, a person who's living without the government, the minute you get a loan from the bank, instantly you're in a liability. Now, if you got a bank account, you good. Just don't get a loan. Just keep the bank account. That'll stay on your asset side. You'll always be on the positive side, which is the assets, right? That's on the private side. That's why we say the unincorporated one who's living without the United States right here in this diagram right here that we're pointing out right here on the top right. These people right here, they're still private. They're still unincorporated. They're able to live without the bank. That's what we call this right here. The moment you get a loan from the bank, you've put a liability on your books. We're not saying it's bad, but you got to learn how to maneuver that loan if you choose to get that loan. So you got to know how to use the bank. Don't let the bank use you. All right, so let's keep going. So we got the unincorporated person. They still got to deal with the bank account. That's great. Next, we got the public individuals and businesses. It's the same game. The public, you got a house, you got a mortgage, you got whatever it is, a car, same game. You got to deal with the bank account. That's your bank. That's the bank account. You see, so everybody is a bank. They're not playing with y'all. They told you, they're telling you right here every day, every public individual person, every business that you got, every person who got a business, you're a bank. Period. They're not going to make it hard. You don't got to go apply and put a business and say, I'm now a bank. You don't have to say that. They already told you. They gave you all the knowledge and information you need. So therefore, you must apply it as far as they are concerned. Because they looking at y'all like a liability. Looking at all of us, right? If we choose to get that loan from the bank. So we got to break this down to our financial literacy, because I know this is a hard topic when you start talking about money, because we say, well, what are you supposed to do? What am I going to do? I don't understand. Why the bank is going to do this to me? Why they doing this to me? I don't know. This is why they operate. They telling you that this is a liability every time you put a lot of money inside that bank account, or it just sits there. So let's get into some more remedies as we get into some more comments, questions, or shares. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or shares so far based upon the bank accounts? Because we understand that that may have been a topic that we had not had a chance to go into. All right, so let's go into our next segment. We're going to be closing us out with this segment this week. And that's going to close us out from what I was able to speak on last week about the redemption manual. So I went into that a little bit. I'm going to be pulling that up in just a few. But I want to make sure that we were able to walk through everything in a more detailed manner to see and prove why the Social Security card has always been really the corporation side of your banking system, and how you're supposed to manage that. It's not a bad thing if you know how to use it. But if you don't know what you're doing, it becomes a problem. It becomes a big problem for you. I know it was a big problem for me for a long time. So that's why we're here to talk about it, get over it, and be able to maneuver out of these things in the future. So I have it right here. I'm going to pull up what I left off from last week. And as you know, this is called something called the Redemption Manual. I went back to the year 2000, tried to go back to where this knowledge was starting. So it looks to me that they've been always talking about dealing with 1041s as far back as the 1999, 2000s. I'm seeing people filing taxes for trust as far back as 1999 and 2000. I'm like, man. So I got on the bus late. I didn't file my first tax return for a trust until close to 2017. So when I started back in 2017, I was learning a lot, and I didn't even understand what the redemption manual was even saying. I was getting all caught up, and they'll call it a sovereign citizen and all these different layers of names and what you're doing. So don't get too caught up in that. I want people to focus more on the taxes. As we talk about taxes all the time, we know that you don't learn about taxes in school. They don't have a place that teaches you taxes. So by going into taxes, this gives you more of a comfort of understanding more ways of getting out of which, claiming your freedom. Like we say, once you get into the common law, this goes into God's law. We'll say that this is God's law that a lot of people have been missing, that you haven't been operating under God's law. You actually have been operating under corporate law. And we've been so used to operating under corporate law, we believe it is the law. And this is a problem for the mind. So that's why we get into the redemption manual, to kind of give you some layers of how in the past a lot of people had discovered this, and they probably was trying to get people out of the matrix in these times as well. It's interesting because that's when the movie actually started coming out. Came out in 1999. I think it came out in like 1999 actually, matter of fact. So what a good time. What a good timing of something to do. All right, so this week we're going to continue on in section 4. I was able to go through and read some of the sections that talk about taxes. So let's go and scroll down into section 4. And we talked about eliminating taxes, and I talked about the jurisdiction of the United States and how the Internal Revenue Service gains jurisdiction. All right, so if we're still trying to learn about this and you're still new to this and you didn't know, well, I'm here to tell and reveal to you today that the Internal Revenue Service gains jurisdiction on a basic level, which is the Social Security number. So by just the Social Security number being accessed, this gives the access to the jurisdiction of the United States. Wait, why can't I get to that part? I just went to. Let's start back at the top. So let's click on taxes. Here we go. Eliminate taxes right here. So it says the Internal Revenue Service gains jurisdiction through the Social Security number. All right, so that's first things first. We learned that last week that the Social Security number gives the corporation jurisdiction. So it's every time you use the Social Security number alone to identify yourself in any form, it's the jurisdiction of the United States, which is Internal Revenue Service. It says, and the street number on your house, which with a zip code puts your house into a federal zone. So it's another way that they gain jurisdiction is that you use the zip codes or you have an address to the house where they're able to gain jurisdiction because of the address. As we go into more layers of the post office versus the United States Postal Service. So we'll talk about that later to show you why you says you give power of attorney also to the house, even if it's a private house, due to your connection with the United States Postal Service versus actually just using the post office, which we'll talk about in a later date. So any comments or questions on things as you go, just type it into the chat. May be able to answer it as I go. So every document that the Internal Revenue Service or any taxing agency or government agency gives you must be accompanied with a declaration under the penalty of perjury. Always reject and return unsigned their offer of contract for failure to swear under the penalty of perjury. All right, so that is your weapon. That is a good point because why are they giving you something to sign under the penalty of perjury? But they have to it has to be something they sign under the penalty of perjury as well. Very interesting. So let's go to eliminating taxes. We talked about this last week, and we talked about the 1041. And I think where I left off was where the action takes place. And we talked about DC. And I think we got all the way down to the OMB form, and then we got to taxable. So let me read through a little bit just to kind of give you all a background to where we left off. So some of y'all can catch up to taxes and why you're supposed to eliminate taxes that are from you in the way that you're paying and you're thinking you're paying taxes. So you're not supposed to be paying taxes in your personal side of yourself. You need to be paying taxes through your trust. All right, so it says right here where the action takes place. Notice where the action takes place. Though the trustee may live, let me try to scroll in for you all. Though the trustee may live or reside in some other location, the trust exists in Washington, D.C. Therefore, the action takes place in Washington, D.C., which is the trust situs. In other words, Washington, D.C. is the place where the trust legal or taxing action takes place. When the trust acts, it acts in Washington, D.C. only, regardless of where the trustee is when the action takes place. Okay, so let's go on right into your Social Security card. Every time you use a Social Security card, you're acting in Washington, D.C. As you're coming from Washington, D.C., and your actions are in other locations from that location, according to the law. Now, ask yourself two questions. First, are you a federal employee? And second, when you perform an action for someone, do you expect to be paid for it? Remember your answers. They are the key to unraveling the tax questions presented by most tax protesters and the solutions given by the IRS. Interesting. So they tell you the solutions are given by the IRS. So we keep in mind that a lot of people, our whole life, we've stayed away from the IRS, stayed away from learning the IRS, but you'll be running to the IRS to get all of your answers, all of your solutions, and your remedy to get out. When taxed, we must remember that the person being taxed is the person employed in the tax jurisdiction. We asked the question before, who was employed? If the person employed was the trust, then the proper IRS form to file is the Form 1041. There we go. So that means when you are employed by the trust, or when the trust is employed, the 1041 must be filed. If the person that was employed was a human, then the IRS says the proper form to file is Form 1040. Okay, here we go. So that goes right into why we say the Form 1041 is required, right? Because if you don't have a 1041, then you are just only proving that you are only going to be employed under the 1040, right? Which is not about just grabbing a whole bunch of money, because we understand that people are trying to get a whole bunch of cash on the 1040 as well as the cash on the 1041, which we understand. There's nothing wrong with that. But we got to make sure that you're in the proper position of what you're supposed to be in. It says if you took out the OMB number in the top right-hand corner of the IRS forms, you will find a number required by the Paper Reduction Act. That number is required to be cross-referenced to the code section that necessitates the use of the form and that has been OMB authorized for such use. The cross-reference index shows the 1040 form is allowed to be used in accordance with a code section within Title 26 and 31, which section only applies to federal employees. That means the only federal employees can use Form 1040. Therefore, if you use Form 1040, you are claiming to be a federal employee. If you are not a federal employee and use Form 1040, you are lying to the IRS, which is a crime according to U.S. Criminal Code. Very interesting. So they're saying that's how they're always getting us, because they win, because they have full authority under the courts because of how we're using the 1040. Very interesting. So it's all a trap if you don't understand what's going on. What happens when people act as a trustee of a trust? All right, so now they're saying that you're the trustee of a trust of the social. So now you're just going to stay the trustee of the social, which makes you liable for all of the acts of the Social Security card, right? So they're going to go straight into the Social Security card, explain what happens when a person acts as trustee of a trust. They are protected by the corporation's sole nature of the position trustee. However, when a trustee begins to receive benefits from the trust outside of the trustee's fiduciary fees, the trustee creates a general partnership with the trust. A general partnership are equally, collectively, and severally liable for the obligations of all of the general partners within the partnership. All right, so that goes right into how you now are liable for all of the debts in connection to the United States corporation. Taxable. Now let's put it all together. SSA created a trust with an SS number. So that's why you got the Social Security number. You got it from the SSA. And that's your Social Security Administration. So they play the administrator, as we went into earlier. I told you all how they can become a trustee of your money. So the Social Security Administration is a trustee of your cash flow of your beneficiary funds. That's what we're going to start telling people to give it more easier understanding. So all the cash flow of your money, of your cash flow in your Social Security account, the Social Security Administration has decision-making powers if they choose to give you the money. All right, we're going to be very clear with this to keep it easier for us to understand, because they created the trust. So you didn't get that Social Security card, and the Social Security Administration didn't create your trust for the money, and they also gave you the Social Security number. So that's why we got to get into those details to give you the point of why the Social Security number holds all the money, all the cash, and it's all involved. It says, and if the trust was employed, it will constitute a federal employee, not because Corporation US is the employer, but because of who the trust creator is. Ah, that is so right. If you are a general partner with a federal employee, then you are equally, collectively, and severally liable for their obligations. That's right. So that means that's when you start bringing your trust into the business, where you have to explain all your bills, your expenses, and your debts. That's in your social. So all that's why we tell people to go into the 1041 your first year or whatever year you have all these debts. all those debts, expenses, and bills become the debts, expenses, and bills of your trust. Because your trust is like a general partner now with your social. Wow. It says, therefore, when the trust owes a mandatory tax, so do its general partners. That's right. So that's bringing your social and your trust together. It's like basically saying, hey, I'm not all the way out of my social yet, but I got this trust. I got this EIN. But now my EIN is also liable for the debts and my social liable. So the goal is you don't want to be in the social, because if you stay in the social, you're going to keep bringing your trust into paying your bills for your social. Wow, that's so crazy. It says the IRS has no authority to deal with humans other than federal employees. Then you got Form 1040. It says, and non-resident aliens or U.S. citizens that owe a tax in Puerto Rico. That's your Form 2555. So they call them non-resident aliens. If you have created a general partnership with the trust, then you owe any and all taxes. The trust is liable for just as much as the trust does, and you are just as much a federal employee as is the trust. Therefore, a proper form to file would be the Form 1040. Aha, so that goes right into anytime we're using the social, this instantly brings us always into the 1040 side. So I wanted to break that down to show how taxable is being created. And now we're going to learn how you're going to get out of the taxes is right here. So this is going into our section tax-free. So let's read through this section carefully to show you how you become tax-free in just a moment. Tax-free. What if the trust was to file its own taxes? Wow, here we go. So that's our first question. And I want to pause right here to kind of give you all what they're talking about. What is a trust? Because some of us are still trying to figure out, okay, how do I get to this pace of not of being tax free? Like, how do I live tax free? Why doesn't it look like that for me? So I'm going to give you some details of how it's supposed to look. And when it looks this way, this is going to help you begin to see for real why using the trust is more important than using your social. All right, so here we go. I got a detail, maybe a 1041 example, but I don't know if I can share that. It may say it's going to be blocked for me to share. So I'm going to give you all just something that gives an example of a estate or trust being filed. All right, so I have an estate, I have a trust filing, right? And this is going to prove that I was able to file a trust, right? So we want to make sure whenever you're dealing with this, you have proof of filing. All right, I can't find one. This is the best example I have right here because it's not going to give me the one that shows that it was accepted. Had an accepted 1041. So this is an example of you sending in the 1041, but I don't think this one was accepted. So let's just look at this one for now. For right now, I'm going to pull it up on the screen for us. All right, so this is going right into Tax Act just to kind of get right into some of these things. As you know, I've been working in the software. This one's going back as far as 2021. Now, you notice when you get into filing the 1041, it'll tell you estate or trust name. So that's very important that you see the first part of you knowing that you're filing a 1041. It'll always label in the IRS system as an estate or trust name. So you got to have that in order to make sure that it's proven that you're having a filing or a 1041 as the example that I'm going through is showing in the redemption manual. So I just want to give you all this right here for a moment. Let's go right back to the redemption manual. I'm going to keep reading a little further of the tax free. It says, what if the trust was to file its own taxes? Even if you had a general partnership, any tax obligation would have already been met, and there would be no tax obligation remaining for the general partner. Interesting. So there you go. So the trust takes upon all of the bills, the expenses, and the debts, and you don't put all those bills, expenses, and the debts inside the social anymore. It all goes into the trust. The proper form for a partnership to file is a Form 1041. All there is to calculating a Form 1041 is you take the funds that were in the trust account at the beginning of the year and subtract them from the funds in the account at the end of the year. There we go. So that goes right into our understanding that we tell people, we ask you to give us all of the money from January to December. So that's how I help some of our people who go into my banking course or a tax trust course. We try to tell you about this with I tell you to add up from everything deposits from January to December. All right, so that is important that you understand that, and you understand what you had at the end of the year. So they call that your net income. Or they're going to say your net. Just keep reading. It's going to say exactly what I'm saying. It says beginning of the year and subtract them from the funds in the account at the end of the year, and the result is the net gain or loss. Then you subtract the net gain or loss from the year's increase, which gives you the amount spent by the trust. Okay, so I just did this all in a summary for you all to kind of show you how the software does this for you. So when you use taxact.com, that's why I went into this example to the left to show you why I use TaxAct. I did the electronic filing, and this gave me more of a detailed understanding of what that was saying. I was able to see my whole entire line of fiduciary fees and so on. Unfortunately, on this one right here, I had to refile this one again, but you'll see that when you use the software, so even if you make a mistake like I did right here, they told me that there were errors on your return that prevented it from being transmitted to the IRS. This return has not been transmitted. Please correct the errors listed below and resubmit your return. So this is why we say use the IRS trusted software, because if you send this in and there's errors, that's going to be horrible, because you want to make sure that you get the right things into the IRS. So use the software. So the software was designed for it to find any problems. So my validation error, as you can see what I had done, I had Form 1099B. I was trying to do a withholding on that 1099B for the taxes paid to the trust, but they told me I had an error. I had not added something there. It says when withholding is present, payer EIN must also be present. Review and correct your entries for federal investment income. And then repeat the filing steps to resubmit the return. Okay. Very important. So I see the payer EIN. I needed to put the EIN of the payer in the system. I had probably forgot to put that EIN in, so I can prove that the 1099B wasn't coming from my social. All right. So I wanted to make sure that you all see, you got to be careful with trying to think your social is going to get you the money back. See, they want to see it coming from your trust. Right. So I went into those details to give details to why you're not able to claim all the money back in your social, because they're going to say, hey, you're on the federal employee side of our banking system. Okay. So we can't give you this money back. You can't claim it back. So you don't get a check. Right. To them, that's the way they feel. Now, if you do it on the 1041 side, as what we're seeing right here, when you file for the estate or the trust name, you are able to then claim those funds because it is on the, which we understand, the trust side. Like I said, that's one of the read through that's to kind of show you how the software goes through pretty much all of that information in the nutshell right here to keep you tax free. So if you understand numbers, you understand how to subtract, you're able to get the numbers that you need. Right. So I showed you this is the part tax free. And I gave you an answer to what it looks like if you're going to do that. You're going to be dealing with this software, which we call TaxAct. And that'll help you maneuver through this 1041 a lot easier than if you were to try to write this with pencil and paper in a calculator, which is very primitive. We're not here to tell you to try to do this hard, complex thing. So that is important for you all to see how an example will look for you to deal with e-filing some information. All right. All right. So any comments or questions or shares, feel free to put that in. Okay. I see a comment come in. Let's answer some of those, and we'll make sure we check our YouTube and make sure everyone is getting their answers in. So yes, for instance, if you're going to prove that you're living in the United States and you're private or you're unincorporated or you're, you know, a foreign trust, we're going to keep it easy for you, then you're going to file a 1041. Like I said, you could be on the domestic side, not saying you have to be a domestic trust, but you can be on the domestic side of the United States and still remain foreign. Just to kind of put it out there for people if they don't know what we read earlier about the description of the IRS codes. So yes, let's go into our question. It says right here, as can you claim 1099B for things like Walmart, Costco, Sam's, etc.? And the short answer is yes, especially if you're using a debit or credit card at Walmart, Sam's, Costco, or wherever this is, right? Now, the reason why we say using your debit card is because we want you to use that business account. Now, if it's in the social, it'll behoove you to use a trust EIN to pay for those items at Walmart, Costco, or Sam's. You want to make sure you're paying for items with your EIN. That's what I'm saying. For instance, let's say I don't have a bank. Well, I can now use a check or I can use cash. As long as I have the cash in my hand, I have the EIN in my hand, I can now pay Costco, Sam's, or whatever, right? And now I can claim that money back. Okay, so you all see the example. As long as I have the EIN in my hand, as long as I have the cash in my hand, and as a customer, I pay them, I am paying them as the EIN. Now, if I'm using my social, I'm just sliding the card, I'm just going to Walmart, Costco, Sam's, even if it's a business account, an LLC, doesn't matter. If you use your social to create the LLC, you're still under the corporation. So we're being very detailed to prove that you can't claim the money back on the LLC for the 1099B because it's still taxed, because the LLC has to pay the tax and the social has to pay the tax, just for those who are in the LLC game. So you can't claim the 1099B for things like Walmart, Costco, Sam's if you have the LLC. All right. So we're making it clear that you must use the trust EIN that the IRS told y'all that if you have the EIN of the trust, this will allow you to make payments for things such and such, and it will be claimable. All right. So that is important that we see it from that perspective of many times we maybe get mixed up on how the 1041 is supposed to look. Okay. So when you know that you filed the 1041, it will tell you, the system will tell you, as I showed you right here, mine, that it told me that I did not do something right. Look, there's some errors, right? So fix your errors and send it back in for us because we want to go ahead and see if you're going to go ahead and give us that EIN number that you said that you used on that trust. Okay. So I get it. I know a lot of us keep trying to get the birth certificate bonds. We're trying to get the social security card money. We're trying to get all the cash, the QSIP numbers, all this stuff. I'm telling you, you're not able to get the money if it's in the social.
Question.
Go ahead. I want to make sure we clear today to make sure everybody got this out of their minds about getting the money from the social. Go ahead. We got somebody with a question.
Yes. So for
One
taxes,
time one.
hello? Hello?
I can't. I'm sorry. I heard someone send two people speaking at one time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sandra, first, and then we'll let Jeremy look like he got his mic is next. Go ahead, Sandra.
All right. So if I have receipts that I paid cash for, let's say in tax year 2024, you're saying that I am not going to be able to deduct or put those things as expenses on my tax return because they were not um, taken under the EIN for the trust?
Well, short answer is not going to go on your 1041 as we showing
I'm
right here in
sorry,
this example.
okay. I
Correct.
mean, under
Yes.
the expenses in the 1040.
Well, no, remember the 1040 is proven that you can't claim anything. If it's on the 1040, it doesn't matter what it is. The government's going to claim it. You see what I'm saying?
Well, as sole proprietor in the section C, Schedule C, where you put your expenses in, and I have receipts, let's say cash receipts for 2024. I am not able to go in and put those receipts in the expense section if they were not under if they were under an LLC, or if they were not. I'm not going to be able to deduct those receipts. That's my question. Yes or no?
Well, the short answer is no. If it's under an LLC, you're not going to be able to claim that money back, is what I'm saying. Right. So the
If it was cash,
1099B, right.
if it was just cash under my social, can I take it back then?
Short answer is no. If it's under your social, you cannot claim it under the social. You have to use the EIN. As we said, the example, I walked into Walmart. I walked into Costco. I walked into Sam's. I got the EIN in my hand, right? I got cash in my hand. I got a check, right? It doesn't matter. As long as I write the check out and it has the name of the EIN on it and it's the trust, all right?
Right.
Now I can claim it. Okay. But if I'm walking in the Walmart, I'm walking into Costco, I'm walking into Sam's, I'm just using my social, right? Even if it's the LLC, you all remember it's connected to your social. All right. So I'm making it clear to show you this is still under the authority of the United States corporation because the LLCs are under the authority of the state and the state is under the authority of the United States. Okay. So we got to get it clear. It's a limited liability. It didn't say it was no limit. It says limited. So these are the layers. Like you have to make sure the trust is mentioned somewhere. Because that's how the IRS looks at it. They want to see, okay, well, where's the estate? Where's the trust? That's all they're gonna ask. Oh, no, I didn't use my estate or trust. I used my social. And they're like, oh, okay. I just used my social. So now they're like, hey, we have authority over this. We have full supervision. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so Jeremy, you're on the mic. I see Jeremy's next. Or maybe he was just coming back in. Okay. All right. So we have everything layered from the tax free. So in order to be tax free, you must have evidence, as we see in this example, of the 1041 being filed. It's very important because we can't get out of this hump. Like I say, these people wrote this back in '99. I didn't even know this information was so available like this. And I got this free back then. I didn't even read this thing in detail like this until recently. So the 1041 is foundational to you getting out of their system. All right, so it's for all of us, right? Yes, we want to use the Schedule C in the beginning to get out of the system as well. We're not saying that the Schedule C isn't involved with getting out with the sole proprietor, but we know you can't stay in the sole proprietor forever because the sole proprietor is going to use the 1040. As we know, the grantor will be forced to use only the 1040 for all of their trust, right? So we don't want you to be under the what they call it. There's a control test, and then there is a court test. So you will be under the court test if you use the 1040. That's another way that they get it as well. So I'm saying exact words because I just dealt with tax court a couple of years ago. Had to go to tax court. Now I didn't go to tax court because I was in trouble. I went to tax court because I did what they said. They said, if you want to contest us, you must create a tax court claim in United States tax court in order to get your check. So yeah, they will test you. They say, hey, if you thought there was any problems or errors with what we sent you, then just take us to tax court. And I'm like, wow, how are you going to do this? This is impossible. We don't have money for tax court. I don't have a money for lawyers to get a tax lawyer. So this is why the government comes at you. They're going to come at you like you're able to do it because you have a 1040. I'm showing you all this is how they do this. So let's keep running through the examples. I'm going to try to get us through more of this and get us past this tax-free. I'm sorry, not tax-free, this tax section for the redemption manual as much as possible this week. So let's keep reading. Are you a federal employee? That's right. So I want to get in before I get into the federal employee. This goes as far as even someone having a 98 number, right? Even if you have the foreign trust 98 number and you change your name, you've done all these things. Okay, you still have to make sure that you're not looking at this from getting money out of the social, right? Or going back under the 1040 side, which they say this goes into the 1040. Which they have the 1040 NRs, which some people know about the 1040 NR, non-resident. That is also a 1040. Just for those who are thinking that you're out of the system because you're doing the NR. You're not out of the system by doing the NR, the 1040 NR. So let's keep going. Anything that's with the 1040 or that's under the corporation is under the federal employee rules. It says, are you a federal employee? Now, the obvious question, are you a federal employee? Answer, no. If you are not a federal employee, then the Form 1040 is the wrong form to be filed. When you perform an action for someone, do you expect to be paid for it? The answer is obviously yes. Then ask yourself, what's your wage? I expect your wage will have been an all expense paid wage. Now go back to the amount spent by the trust and notice that all of the funds spent by the trust were spent on the trustee. Look at that. So that goes right back to our examples we tell you all in our banking course, along with our revocable trust course, how you are now becoming this fiduciary. See, if you don't believe you're the fiduciary, then it's almost like you still believe you're under their trust. So this is all going back to your faith again. Got back to your full faith. As we said earlier, this is going to get into your faith and your credit. It says, yeah, now like I say, I'm using words because these are financial words. This is not a biblical only understanding, right? So we may go into biblical understanding of faith. You know, faith is a substance of things not seen, and we know the scriptures. I'm just explaining to you this is an actual tangible thing. Like your faith is a tangible, actual document. You have full faith and full credit. Because the United States Department of State, I showed you all that example earlier, how now the United States Department of State is saying you have full faith and credit. We go back to that diagram to kind of give some of our comers who came in a little bit later. But we want to make sure that we have full faith and full credit, because this is going to give you the full understanding of coming out of the name that we were giving, such as this birth certificate name. So you're coming out of the birth certificate name. You're not going to stay there and keep operating under the birth certificate. And even if you get a new name, you don't go back and create a brand new social security card with the new name. So we know some of us have done that and said, hey, I got the new name, but I got a new social security card. But you're still under the system by having the new social security card, even with the new name. So come all the way out and you never go back in the way that you used to go back in. We're going to say that because you're going to go back in with a trust, a new name, a new number, a new trust. So this is how it'll look if you're going through the authentication process of coming out of the United States of America, as you're seeing yourself as this foreign trust, right? So this is how it looks from that perspective if you're looking at it from what this document actually says. So when you read this full Manila document, it does say full faith and credit, which I'll go into more illustrations of this Department of State foreign authentication document that you will be able to get in the near future. Is it required to do the 1041? That short answer is no. So if somebody asks this question, Brother Wallace or Brother Rock, do I got to have this to do the 1041? The answer is no. Will it help? Absolutely. It'll help a lot because it'll get you a lot of faith. It'll get you a lot of confirmation, affirmation that things are going to go through and that you're coming out of the ways that they had prescribed for us to understand in order to get the funds. All right, so let me read right here. It says, remember back to the time when you got the jobs you performed for the trust. Did you not plan on using the funds you generated from the trust to meet all of your expenses? Then notice that the funds spent by the trust were all your wages. That means the amount spent by the trust goes on Form 1041 at the line designated for fiduciary fees. Interesting. So right here, it tells you the fiduciary fees is where you're supposed to put the expenses, and it goes on Form 1041. If you calculate the form, you will likely notice that there are no taxes owed by the trust. That means that even if there were a general partnership between the trust and the trustee, there is no tax obligation for the general partner. Wow, look at that. So this is by law explaining how you are able to get out of taxes and coming out of the corporation at one time. And we see that all the stuff that we say means the amount spent are on Form 1041. The only real problem left is that most of the people at the IRS think you owe that tax. Look at that. So that goes to your problem, your agent. Remember, I was telling y'all, don't forget. Look, I can say it as many times as I want, but you always remember, you must prove to the agent. You must tell them the code. The agents. Remember, I was telling you to overcome the agents in the beginning. We talked about how this is even a way of coming out of the matrix because the matrix is filled with agents, right? And they say you never want to be in contact with an agent. So this type of knowledge is like Matrix 5. You're past the matrix. You're going to overcome the matrix if you're able to face the agents, which we say that the IRS thinks that you owe that tax. Because these people that work there, it's your job to convince them that you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. So that goes back to where I'm telling you, you must call the IRS through our courses because some of us are still not calling the IRS. You're thinking that, hey, I got the EIN, I got the trust, I got all this stuff done. And you all go straight to the bank as if the bank has the power. And I was explaining to you that the bank has no power. The bank has no power. They can't get any access to that money. So you got to convince the agency of the IRS with your account to release the funds, even the SSA. So this goes as far as even the SSA. So we're going to read more and explain to you the IRS is given this authority, but we're going to go into details and show you how the IRS is giving authority over to another party once they got power of attorney as well. That's because when SSA creates the trust, they do it constructively without an indenture, without a deed, according to statute. We solve that problem by creating a proper indenture and then sending that indenture to the SSA. This methodology is being taught now and every case is being used. The IRS has paid every claim by returning the past 3 years taxes to everyone that claimed then. Interesting. So there's interesting things that you're able to get the last 3 years. This goes right back into the science that we were speaking of going back for the taxes. They're called the back file. You'll be able to go back and get the funds that were sitting on your social for the last 3 years on your tax returns. As you can see, this is given out for education purposes only. And then they're going to go into some definitions of the indenture. And you understand where this is coming from. Black's Law, 4th edition, the indenture. You can send over to the SSA. They're showing you that you'll be able to send that over to the Social Security Administration. So we don't have that much time. We're going to go into try to close out from overcoming taxes. And we're going to see today that one of our main factors of taxes is us getting out of the premise of being thought of as a federal employee. And so we never learned taxes in college. You didn't learn about anything about taxes from any format of any class or anything. So that's why we're here to give you diagrams to show you on the screen where all this knowledge, where all this information is coming from. So I wanted to show you right here first is the revocable trust right here is where we're going to show the control. I'm going to show you where you get the control from and how you can take over the power from the government that has been taking power of you based upon this irrevocable power that they have put in place. So right here, this the irrevocable trust right here on the bottom. Let's read this first. An irrevocable trust is a trust in which the grantor has no control. That's right. So that means you have no control over the trust because the United States government has created that. So that irrevocable trust, that social security card, you have no control over that. Like we said, we just proved to you through the SSA, the Social Security Administration, is the trustee. They have full control, they have full supervision, and they have full decision-making powers to give you the benefits of that trust. So it's very important for us to see it from that perspective of the irrevocable trust and how that goes right into the United States. Another thing that the United States does file, which is very interesting, they're able to file a trust as well. So it says right here, they will be filing the trust is responsible for reporting income on Form 1041. So, wow, even the United States files a Form 1041, U.S. income tax return for estates and trusts. Next is a revocable trust. This is the trust that you're going to file right here. As we say, you'll be doing the 1040 and you'll also do the 1041. So you want to be able to do both. So right here, the grantor has control of the trust, has power to repeal and pays the taxes of the trust on his or her Form 1040. That's right. So you don't pay taxes on the 1041 like the answers we got earlier. We just explained to you. If you have the 1041 and you have a revocable trust, you don't pay taxes. You don't pay taxes on the 1041. 1041 is tax free. Now, if you're going to be paying taxes, it's going to be on the 1040. All right. So this is where it shows the IRS is telling you when you have the revocable trust, this is where this information will come in and it will show the taxes and so on, how those things will be paid. Now, look right here. Note the grantor files Form 1041 for informational purposes only. Very interesting. They always tell you this over and over for information purposes only. This means you don't even have to disclose anything. The grant is private. This is unincorporated. This goes when you become fully unincorporated from their government and their system, when you're totally, fully in and out, always thinking about using the Form 1041. Now, in the meantime, if you still got stuff going on in the social, you're going to still have to continue to pay the taxes that's dealing with the 1040, but you're going to have to file your taxes as a sole proprietor, which we're not going into that today. We're all specifically going 100% into trust. Want to make sure you fully have the trust, the revocable trust, so that you're covered with the 1041 and it's taking you fully out of their system, which is out of the 1040. So that's our full layer of giving you some diagrams of how that looks when you start thinking about coming out of the system this way as well. As we say, we got the grantor trust and the complex trust. We talked about that a little bit in the inter vivos trust. But let me give you some of the options where you all got to that screen where they tell you to choose trust. That way some of us will see where we are and how we more than likely have the same things, but you're not realizing what you're doing and what you're supposed to do with what you have. So when you go and grab the EIN, this is what the irs.gov shows you right here. You're able to go to irs.gov. Am I telling you to do this? No, I'm just explaining to you how it's done. What I expect, if people need help, you can go through our walkthroughs. We offer Monday through Friday. That's why we do strategy courses, so we can help everybody with the strategy. So right here, we tell you to scroll all the way down to trust. So we're going to get to trust. That's going to be the first place you're going to learn how to deal with. and we tell you it shows you revocable trust. All right, so that'll be it when you deal with trust for now. Don't go into any of these other trusts. Focus on revocable trust first. And then as you begin to master that, you'll be able to get into those other trusts later. So that's where we got the answer from, for someone to say, okay, where did you start at? Where did you begin? Where did you type? It'll be right there on this government website. Right here will be the options that we talked about earlier. And out of all of the options, we tell you that we only give you 2 options that you want to choose. The first one is going to be for one time only. You're going to change the revocable trust, and that'll be the new name that you created for yourself. You got to have a new name that you created for yourself. We tell you to come out of the birth certificate name because we know that the lawyers or the attorneys or different people, they're going to tell you to use the same name as the revocable living trust. Now, we see the IRS doesn't say it's required for you to get legal advice or to use a lawyer, a CPA, or a third party. All right. So if you're using a third party to get information, whether it's a third party book or a third party law, it's the same. So the IRS is the main code law over the revocable trust to get you out of the system, and the um, name, right? So we're going to explain this in the most basic level to make sure that the name is very important and that you choose when you do the revocable trust. Next, the other option we tell you is trust all others. This is another way. So this is if you're going to be creating businesses and you're going to be operating multiple businesses outside of the LLCs, we tell you to focus on trust all others. And if you don't do this, you're going to be still stuck with having to create a trust anyway to manage a regular business, right? And because that business, if it's a trust, we already explained to you that it becomes a tax-free business if you begin to use Form 1041. Now, if you begin to use other tax forms, you must pay taxes on those businesses. It's very important and required for you to do that. So this is part of what it looks like when we say you're making your choices. And they even give you a clue right here. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the heck is going on, they tell you you must identify one type of trust you are applying for. If you don't see the type of trust, select trust all others. That's right. So that means if you don't see the type of trust, you don't know what you got going on, the IRS by default was going to choose that trust that I just mentioned to you anyway. So it's up to you. You can stay on the LLC and the corporation side, or you can choose to come out of that corporation side and come into what they tell you right here on the screen, trust all others. Now, we know the revocable trust, we tell people in our strategy to use it for tangible assets. So we're not going to break down our strategy for you all live or anything, because the strategy is private and we do it for custom strategies for each of our beneficiaries. So yes, you can do this on your own for free, but we do have specific customized strategies that we give and present that we're not able to make privy to the public. So we'll close right here to give examples of what that looks like on a free public website that the irs.gov tells you, and how to fill out their forms. Now let's go to how to look for me if I had to do this. Make sure I got a good example. So right here, this would be an example how it looked for me and how long ago that I was able to get this done. So as you can see, it tells you on the same way that I've been showing you from the beginning is the EIN document that you're going to use to identify yourself. So my situation was back in 2016. As you can see, the date of my notice, I was able to finally file my taxes for the 1041 in 2017 for the first time. And once I filed my taxes for 1041 in 2017, I was able to claim the funds back that I paid into the trust. After that, that got me to the next level, to where I am now. And I understood where to communicate and what name to use, what number to use. That gets me down to following these instructions. And they tell me right here to file, to keep this in my permanent records. and to tell me to file documents, payments, correspondence, and everything right here. And then it down here tells Form 1041. So this is where it gets to where the IRS and the system is updating you and telling you what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to operate here on out. So if you do this, then you will be able to go through the same experiences and the same ways that I was able to go through as well. So if you have these things, yes, this is important for you to know how to operate, how to use them, and how to run strategies. That's why we say we don't sell you documents. I don't sell you how to get an EIN. I don't sell you how to get a revocable trust document or a whatever, right? So you get all these things. At the end of the day, you still need a strategy. You need a strategy. How are you going to utilize all of these EINs that you have? How are you going to file the 1041? What are you going to do, right? That's what this is about. Here we go. It says, if you have questions about the forms or the due dates shown, you can call us at the phone number or write to us at the address at the top of the notice. That's right. So that means if you don't use our strategies, then you must have to use the IRS because they will help you as well for free. But you have to follow their instructions. See, we know how to follow the instructions. We already write to the IRS. We already communicate with them. So we already know the answers. But if you want to know those answers for free, like I found out as well, then you can do exactly what these instructions tell you right here. So they tell you exactly what to do for free. All right. So we want to make sure that all this is known knowledge, that this isn't something that I'm keeping secret or, I'm charging for the knowledge. I'm charging for the information. It's not me charging you for anything. I'm telling you everything for free. Here we go. It says, if you need help, right? If you need help, don't act like you got to get help somewhere else. They told you right here. If you need help in determining your annual accounting period tax year, see publication 538, accounting periods and methods. So I always give you a publication to the answers for some reason. Then it's up to us to study that publication and see what they're talking about. So I didn't have to go outside of the IRS. I didn't have to go to gurus to get the information. I didn't have to go to the secured party creditors or to the American nationals, or I had to change my nationality and become part of the Moorish science temple in order to get access to this knowledge or this information. So I'm saying all this on purpose because I know this is what a lot of us are thinking this is about. This is about you getting out of the system by filing a 1041 and learning the accounting methods that this government has told you to understand and learn. Now, some people say, well, I don't have to worry about filing taxes because I got these other ways and these other things already going on. That's fine. You can just live foreign. But, to them, being foreign is you're unincorporated and you're off the grid. So eventually you're going to have to still put that 98 number if you're so foreign at the utility company, right? So you're going to have to get the utility bill or you're going to have to go get the phone at that corporation company. So we're not saying that, use the 98 number publicly because that's what that'll be. You just use the trust as a business and then use that. And then you file your taxes to get your money back based upon what we understand as your claims. So we want to make it detailed as much as possible because we know there's so much knowledge out there that's deterring us from doing certain things. And we want to make sure that you're able to fully understand what the IRS is telling you to do. So the 1099B was a question. Somebody asked that question. Do you also do a 1099B for disciary fees? Yes, that is absolutely. I would do a 1099B on fiduciary fees because it should be all the money, right? This is where we get into the bills of exchange. So some of us, are you exchanging those bills that they send to you to pay to get access to money? That is where all the money is coming from. So some of us, you should have no money sitting anywhere because if it's a bill payment, then as soon as the money come in, it's paying the bill, right? So why is the money sitting inside the bank account? That's what I'm telling you. I can't make this up. I wish I was trying to do the same stuff and it didn't work out and I had to change because I mean it's this what it is. No money can sit in the bank. That's another thing. You can't have money just sitting in the bank. We talked about that as well. That goes into your secured credit card or your post office money orders. Whatever else you got to do, make sure you take that cash out of the bank. Make sure it's less than $10, 100, like 10, 20, $50. I don't know. So we got to be very careful with seeing why the 1040 keeps popping up. You got to get out of this classification. So there we go right here. It says we assign you a tax classification based on information obtained from you or your representative. So they give you your tax classification. So you can ask them for that. They will give that tax classification to you. So I think I close out from this part right here because I think we went over everything that was needed to see the full layer of going around to the point of being a trust. Right. So at the end of the day, as long as we're seeing ourselves as a trust, this will give us the layer out of their situation, which we'll say is the jurisdiction. Now we know that there's other parts of the jurisdiction which we can't go into this week. As you can see, if they can mail you things, if they can mail you bills, then this is taking you still in their jurisdiction. So we'll talk more about this in a later time for our week, since we got out of our time this week. We'll go into more as we go into the Internal Revenue Service, take it or leave it information, as you can see they talk about here. So very, very detailed information, but thank you all for what we talked about for the 1041. I do open up with comments, questions, or shares for this moment in time, and I'll try to read any comments or questions that anyone else has typed out here in the YouTube world as well. So I yield now for a moment for that time.
Question. So if you have an estate EIN, but you've never filed a 1041 on it, can you go back and file all those years where you didn't file?
Right. It says up to 3 years. So you won't be able to file back all years. So they do have the discretion to deny you for certain years if it goes back too far. But we're finding out there's different forms that you can possibly file if it just came into your knowledge as far back as you need. But I think the short answer is yes, you should be able to file back for up to 2 to 3 years.
Thank you.
We got Meduti. Sorry about that. We got Medutiel. Like he was on the mic. You were going to say something for us? Medutiel? Or maybe he has to press *6 if you're on the phone. Maybe that's blocking out *6. If you're using the phone, it'll unmute your mic. All right. So I think that's everything. So I think if we have no more comments, questions, or shares, thank you all for always being inspirational for me to go ahead and continue these calls and to get all this information out as best as we possibly can. We don't want to make this hard for anyone. We don't want to gatekeep the knowledge because we know that it's on irs.gov. So just give everyone the locations where you can find this. And if they need your help, work man or work woman is worthy of their hire. That's what we're going to say, because you are worthy of your time and your energy and your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding. You should be compensated for that. So nobody's going to do it for free, because we learn when you give it for free, the value goes down. They don't want to see it as valuable. Hey, you just did it for free. So yes, that's important that you all begin to see that as well for your business, because your trust is a business now and you have to do business. You can't look at it as I'm going to take this personal. So I'll close out with that. Thank you all for this week. Peace, love, prosperity, joy, and we'll talk again.